Mr. President, managers, just wanted to take a few minutes to discuss the findings from our 2023 Do-It-Yourself Diagnostic and Citizen-Assisted Tributary Monitoring Programs. My name is Blaine Einigner. I'm the project coordinator. I'll be presenting the majority of the materials, and Victoria D'Amico, our water resource technician, will also be providing some comments on the slides themselves. In 2023, we looked at two areas for the DIY diagnostic, the direct drainages to Comfort Lake, and then also several drainages around the county line subwatershed, which is located at the Washington County, Chisago County line. And for our citizen-assisted tributary program, we expanded to all basins of Forest Lake in 2023. Similar to previous years, we use the Hawk DR300 pocket colorimeter that can detect for orthophosphate, and we targeted precipitation events that were greater than 0.75 inches from May through September. In the image here, you see all the equipment associated with our monitoring effort, the colorimeter, reagents, and then various other tools and equipment that we use to collect and analyze our samples. Before we look at the results for this year, I just wanted to talk about the climate conditions in 2023. We actually saw an average precipitation year. We had heavy rains in the spring, it was considered rather wet, and then a dry summer period, and then rains picked up again in the fall. This is similar to what we saw in 2021 and 2022, average precipitation years, but long spells of drought throughout the summer or the monitoring season. As mentioned earlier, the DIY diagnostic focused on two areas, the direct drainages to Comfort Lake and the county line subwatershed. Here's an image of the Comfort Lake area. The warmer the color of the dot for each location, or the more red the dot, the higher the average phosphorus concentration that we found in 2023. We had a total of 11 sites that we monitored. Due to drought, only 5 of the sampling locations were able to be monitored regularly. We were able to collect samples at another 4 locations, but it was intermittently throughout the season. And we had a total of 16 samples collected in 2023, and we will be looking at the results shortly. The county line subwatershed is located along Highway 8 at the junction of Washington and Chisago County, just south of the Holiday gas station there along at the corner of Greenway Avenue and Highway 8. We had 7 monitoring locations in this area, and we collected samples at 5 monitoring events for a total of 18 samples collected from this area in 2023. Here is the data from the Comfort Lake Direct Drainage DIY Diagnostic. We're looking at box and whisker plots. As a reminder, the box represents the interquartile range, or 25% on each side of the median. The line in the box is the median, the X is the mean, and the whiskers represent the lower and upper extremes, or maximum values. Any circles or dots beyond the whisker ends indicate data outliers. To recap, we had 5 sampling events for a total of 16 water samples collected. Looking at the table below, we have quite a few data gaps. Didn't collect as much data as we would have liked in 2023. We did have several sites with elevated levels, as you can see in the table and figure. The highest being several stormwater features on the west side of the lake. Both of these features did contain some residual sediments that could have contributed to the elevated readings here. So again, more data is needed to be collected. You can see the other sites that we did have elevated levels were generally associated with road runoff or road infrastructure, ditches, culverts, etc. So due to the sparse data set, it's problematic to draw any clear conclusions from this year's effort, and we will be repeating this diagnostic effort in 2024 to gather additional information and to really get an idea of where we have loading within the direct ranges to Comfort Lake. Here we have the results from the county line subwatershed DIY diagnostic effort. To recap, we had 5 sampling events and a total of 18 water samples collected. Much less data than we would have liked. Looking at the table below, Again, very sparse, lots of missing data here from our data set. We did see elevated levels from several sites in our study here, primarily associated with Greenway Avenue or the ditches along Greenway Avenue. These ditches have wetland-like features along the majority of their length. It's possible that the roadways or Greenway Avenue is a source of nutrient due to its heavy traffic or high use, or that the ditches themselves are now a source of nutrient as they have collected decades of inputs from the roadway. Perhaps both of these statements are accurate. Additional study is recommended to further understand the county line subwatershed and how the roadways and ditches affect nutrient loading. In 2023, we did some additional investigation in the county line subwatershed. We collected wetland soils from the wetlands directly adjacent to Highway 8. We had 7 soil samples that were collected in total, and those samples were sent to the University of Minnesota Soil Lab for analysis. In the image you see here, this is an image of the study area. The yellow polygon is the study area itself. The stars indicate the locations where the soil samples were taken. The darker red the star is, the higher the concentration that we found in those soils. And the red arrows indicate all the inputs into that wetland, so ditches essentially. And then the blue line is the outflow from that wetland, which is right at the county line there. Results of the wetland monitoring effort indicated the areas closest to the highway had elevated levels of Bray phosphorus. On our table here, those would be the darker red cells. Those would be high concentrations of Bray phosphorus. The pinker or lighter red are elevated levels, and then the gray are kind of normal wetland background levels that we would see in a typical wetland. All this information was shared with Chisago County to help inform the coming Highway 8 expansion. The county expressed a willingness to include the removal of the sediments if they are within the highway right-of-way or the highway expansion envelope during the reconstruction, expansion of the highway itself. When and if implemented, this would help to reduce the nutrient loading coming from this wetland and improve water quality in the Sunrise River and downstream water bodies. We'll be working with the county to ensure that this work does get completed with the highway expansion. With the efforts of Jess Hall, our Green Corps member, and Victoria D'Amico, our watershed assistant, the 2023 Forest Lake Subwatershed Citizen Assisted Tributary program expanded to all 3 basins of Forest Lake. Their hard work increased the CAT volunteer team to 12 members, which allowed the team to monitor an additional 14 sites as compared to 2022. In 2023, water samples were collected at 17 direct drainage sites throughout the Forest Lake subwatershed by volunteers. Another 8 sites were monitored at the beginning of the season by district staff. This basically captured spring runoff events. Over the sampling season, a total of 69 samples were collected and processed from 7 primary rainfall events and an additional 8 minor rainfall events. Despite the impact of summer drought conditions, this is a significant increase in the data collected as compared to previous years, and is most likely due to the expansion of the program into all 3 basins of Forest Lake and an increase in volunteer precipitation.
So of the 17 primary sites, 71% had an average phosphorus concentration above the MNPCA's recommended concentration for urban residential areas, which is 0.325 milligrams per liter. This can be seen in the image on the slide. Any green points are sites that had an average phosphorus concentration that was lower than the recommended concentration, whereas any red points are above. We use the standard because the majority of the sites surrounding Forest Lake are primarily residential. It is important to note that infrequent precipitation events can contribute to these elevated numbers. During dry periods, impervious surfaces such as sidewalks and streets can build up with phosphorus-laden sediment. When it does rain, the sediments are washed towards storm drains and into lakes. Longer dry periods allow more buildup and can contribute to runoff having higher concentrations of phosphorus. However, this doesn't necessarily equate to higher phosphorus loading as much as a shift in the time of the loading. So as I mentioned, 71% had an average phosphorus concentration above the recommended concentration for urban residential areas. 3 of the primary sites and 1 secondary site had average orthophosphate levels above 1 milligram per liter. 2 of these sites were along high-traffic residential roadways, and the third is a culvert draining Parsons Wetland along Hayward Avenue North. These sites had 4 or fewer samples collected, and 13 of the total 25 monitoring sites, when including the 8 spring sites, had 2 or fewer samples collected throughout the monitoring season due to drought. Here's a map of the 4 sites with elevated readings. The wetland at Hayward Avenue, culvert on North Shore, and culverts in Woodland Drive Southeast and 10th Street Southeast. All 4 will be monitored again in the 2024 monitoring season. The table shown has the 2023 CAT dataset in full. It's important to note the many gaps and holes due to dry conditions this year. It's therefore difficult and perhaps misleading to evaluate potential nutrient sources based on the sparse dataset collected in 2023 alone. Staff recommends that this year's CAT effort is continued in future years to fully evaluate loading in the Forest Lake watershed. Special attention will be given to the 3 primary sites that did show highly elevated orthophosphate levels. The incidence of overall elevated phosphorus readings found this year does speak to the importance of the district's enhanced street sweeping program. We should encourage enhanced street sweeping in highly developed urban areas, as it has proven to be one of the most cost-effective water quality improvement programs in the district. Consideration should be given to supporting the expansion of this program around Forest Lake and throughout the watershed where appropriate.
Thank you, Victoria. Past duplicate water quality sample comparison studies used water quality samples from the EOR-led diagnostic monitoring effort. In 2023, there was no such diagnostic monitoring effort, so we pivoted to using water samples from our stream monitoring program. Upon analysis of the data set, it was realized that the 2 data sets were not comparable, as the stream monitoring program measured total phosphorus and our DIY technology is only capable of detecting orthophosphate. As such, we do not have any data from 2023 for the comparison study. However, we will be picking this back up in 2024 because we're still trying to determine the accuracy of the DIY technology. We'll be using samples from our lake hypolimnion and metalimnion monitoring effort. Both of these efforts focus on orthophosphate, so we will be able to compare those 2 data sets. Samples will be taken to instrumental labs and also analyzed with our pocket colorimeter, and those data sets will be compared. We did, however, implement several improvements to our DIY analysis protocol in 2023 that should improve the accuracy of the DIY technology as compared to the lab analysis. Those improvements include the use of a micropipette to ensure that the exact amount of water sample is being analyzed. In the past, staff have used the graduated vials that are included with the hot colorimeter. These vials have proved to be somewhat inaccurate as to the amount of water that you would need to get the proper water to reagent ratio. So we pivoted to the micropipette to ensure that we have the exact amount of water. We've also ensured that the water samples that we're using are brought up to room temperature before we do the analysis. In the past, the samples have been either chilled or on ice prior to analysis. We've realized that when the samples are cool, we're not dissolving the entire amount of reagent that's needed. So we're now bringing the samples up to room temperature to ensure that we're getting the proper water to reagent ratio again. The third thing that we've done to improve the protocol is performing more frequent testing of our DIY colorimeter with our orthophosphate standard solution. We hope that these 3 changes will improve the accuracy of the DIY technology, and we should see those results in the 2024 study that will be implementing next year. In conclusion, 2023 was another challenging year for monitoring due to drought. As such, few conclusions can be drawn from the sparse data set that we were able to collect. Our recommendations moving forward are to repeat the DIY and CAT efforts in 2024. That would be for the DIY, continuing the Comfort Lake direct drainage study, as well as the county line subwatershed study. And for CAT, that would be continuing looking at all the direct drainages into Forest Lake using volunteers once again. And in 2024, we also will be reviving the duplicate sample comparison study, and hopefully that data will show that the improvements that we made to the analysis protocol have been effective, and we have better precision and accuracy with the DIY technology.
In closing, we'd like to acknowledge all of the participants of the 2023 CAT program. It would not be possible to collect all of these samples without volunteers, and the data collected is very valuable, so thank you.